Hi guys, I hope you're good since our last video.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Today we're diving deep into Web3.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to break all this down.
Big thanks to Creditizens for suggesting this topic.
Yeah.
Before we jump in, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. All right, so Web3 NFTs, decentralization, blockchain, the whole shebang.
The future of the internet.
You ready to decode it all?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are really curious about what all this means.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is Web3?
Well, you can think of it as the next version of the internet.
Like Web 1.0, Web 2.0, and now
Web3.
Web3.
Exactly, and it's built on this technology called blockchain.
Yeah.
And one of the big differences from Web 2, which is what we're using now, is this idea of decentralization.
So Web 2, that's like Facebook, Google, all those big companies.
Exactly. They control a ton of data.
And they kind of control our experience online.
They kind of make the rules.
So Web3 wants to break free from that.
Yeah, it's all about putting control and ownership back in the hands of the users.
So instead of companies controlling the internet,
The users control it.
wow, that's a huge shift.
Right.
One of the terms I keep hearing with Web3 is NFTs. What are those?
So NFTs stand for non-fungible tokens.
Non-fungible tokens.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know.
Okay.
But basically think of it like a digital certificate of authenticity
Okay.
for a digital asset.
Like a piece of digital art.
Exactly. Or a collectible, even virtual real estate in a game.
So it's like owning the original,
Yeah, provable ownership.
even though it's digital.
Right. So instead of just having a copy of a file,
You actually own the thing.
you own the original verifiable on the blockchain.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And one of the articles you sent me talked about how NFTs are like changing the art world.
Yeah, it's pretty revolutionary.
Like artists can connect directly with their fans.
Cut out the middleman.
No more galleries.
Exactly. They can set their own royalties, get a percentage every time their NFT is resold.
So it's a whole new economy for creative work.
Absolutely. It's really empowering for creators.
Okay, so we've got NFTs empowering creators. Let's go back to decentralization for a second. How does that actually work?
So there are different ways it can manifest, but one example is DAOs,
DOs.
decentralized autonomous organizations.
Okay,
It's like a digital cooperative
okay.
where instead of having a CEO making all the decisions,
It's more like a community.
yeah, the members of the DAO, they vote on proposals, allocate funds.
So they govern the organization together.
Exactly. It's all about transparency and shared ownership.
That's really interesting. So we've got NFTs, we've got DAOs. It seems like Web3 is all about giving more power to the individual, but is it all good?
Well, like any new technology, there are challenges.
Okay, like what?
One of the big ones right now is scalability.
Scalability.
Yeah, basically some blockchain networks, they struggle to handle a large volume of transactions.
So it gets slow, inexpensive.
Yeah, exactly, like rush hour traffic on the blockchain.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So scalability is one challenge. What else?
Security is another big one.
Oh yeah, I've heard about hacks and stuff.
Right. The blockchain itself is secure,
Oh,
but the applications built on top of it, like smart contracts, those can be vulnerable.
so it's like building a skyscraper on a solid foundation,
Yeah, the foundation might be strong.
but the building can still have problems.
Exactly. And with blockchain transactions being irreversible,
Oh, right. You can't undo them.
any mistake can have big consequences.
That's scary. What other challenges are there?
Well, another big one is the environmental impact.
Oh, right. I've heard about that. Some of these blockchains use a ton of energy.
Yeah, especially the ones that use proof of work as their consensus mechanism.
So it seems kind of counterintuitive for a technology that's all about decentralization and empowerment
Yeah, it's a valid
to
concern.
be using so much energy.
But the Web3 community is working on it.
Okay, good.
There's a lot of research and development going into more sustainable solutions.
Like what?
Well, things like proof of stake, which is a more energy efficient consensus mechanism,
Oh, okay.
and even entirely new blockchain technologies that are designed to be eco-friendly from the ground up.
So it sounds like there's a lot of work being done to make Web3 more sustainable.
Absolutely. It's a top priority for a lot of people in the space.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot in this first part of our deep dive. Decentralization NFTs,
Yeah.
DAOs, the challenges of scalability, security, and environmental impact.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But here's the big question I want to leave you with.
Okay.
Is Web3 just a buzzword, or is it the future of the internet?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And if it is the future,
What role do you want to play in shaping it? It
That's-
really is the question, isn't it?
like, it's one thing to understand the tech,
Yeah.
but what does it all actually mean?
How is it going to change things?
Yeah, like, how would a more decentralized internet actually work?
Well, one of the biggest changes, I think, would be a shift in power.
Yep.
Right now, a handful of tech giants,
Facebook, Google?
exactly, they basically control our online experiences.
Yeah.
They collect our data, they set the rules.
And Web3 wants to change that.
Yeah, it's about giving users more control.
So it's not just about switching to different apps or platforms.
It's a fundamental change in how we interact with the internet.
More control over our data.
Exactly. You would decide how your data is used, who benefits from it.
Instead of companies just taking it and profiting from it.
Right.
That's pretty powerful. And what about the economic side of things?
Oh, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
We talked about NFTs and how they're empowering creators.
Yeah.
But how else could Web3 change how value is created online?
Well, it opens up a lot of new possibilities for individuals and communities to create and capture value.
Like what?
Well, we talked about DAOs.
Right. Decentralized autonomous organizations.
Exactly. They allow groups of people to pool resources, make decisions, collectively build projects together.
So instead of needing a company or a traditional hierarchy,
You can have a decentralized organization.
with shared ownership.
Exactly. Everyone has a stake in the success of the project.
Can you give me an example of how a DAO might actually work?
Sure. Imagine a group of filmmakers who want to make a movie,
Okay.
but they don't want to go through the traditional studio system.
Yeah.
They could create a DAO where each member contributes funds and has a say in the creative process.
Okay.
And then they could use smart contracts to automate things like revenue sharing decision making.
So it's like a more democratic and transparent way of making a movie.
Exactly. And this model could be applied to all sorts of things.
Wow. It seems like Web3 could revolutionize not just how we use the internet, but how we organize and collaborate as a society.
It has that potential.
But are we really ready for such a huge shift?
Well, like any major technological disruption, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, there are always challenges.
Exactly. We can expect some pushback, some setbacks along the way.
So what are some of the obstacles that Web3 needs to overcome?
Well, we've talked about scalability and security concerns.
Right, those are big ones.
But another big one is usability.
Usability.
Yeah, right now, interacting with Web3 apps can be pretty complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like setting up a crypto wallet, understanding gas fees.
It's not exactly user-friendly.
Not yet, at least. So for Web3 to really go mainstream, it needs to be easier for the average person to use.
It's like the early days of the internet.
Exactly.
Everything was so clunky and complicated.
It took time for things to become user-friendly enough for mass adoption.
So usability is one hurdle. What else?
Regulation is another big one.
Oh yeah, governments are still trying to figure out how to deal with all this.
Exactly. There's a lot of uncertainty around things like cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And that can stifle innovation.
It does feel like the Wild West out there sometimes.
Yeah, we need clear and consistent regulations that protect consumers but also allow the Web3 space to grow.
So regulation, usability, anything else?
Education, I think, is crucial.
Oh.
For Web3 to really thrive, people need to understand how it works.
Yeah, we need to move beyond the hype and the speculation.
Exactly. We need reliable information. We need educational resources.
So it's about digital literacy.
Absolutely. It's about equipping people with the knowledge and skills to navigate this new landscape.
We're doing our part with this deep dive, trying to break all this down for our listeners.
Definitely.
But there's a lot more to learn and explore. So where do we go from here?
Well, the future of Web3 really depends on all of us.
Us.
Yeah, developers, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and everyday users like you.
So it's not just about waiting for Web3 to happen.
It's about actively participating in shaping it.
Okay, I like that. But how can people actually get involved?
We'll start by learning more about blockchain technology,
Okay.
explore different Web3 applications, support projects that align with your values, join online communities, engage in conversations.
So become an informed and engaged user.
Exactly. Don't just be a passive observer.
But let's be realistic for a second. We've talked about all the potential benefits of Web3.
Yeah.
But what if it doesn't live up to the hype? What could prevent it from becoming the decentralized future that everyone's talking about?
Well, if we don't solve the scalability and usability issues,
Yeah.
it could end up being a niche technology.
Only accessible to a small group of people.
Exactly. Instead of being open and inclusive,
It could become a gated community.
yeah, that's a risk. And another concern is government regulation.
Right.
If governments implement overly restrictive regulations,
Yeah.
that could stifle innovation and discourage participation.
It's a tough balance.
It is. We need regulations that protect people.
But also allow Web3 to flourish.
Exactly. And another potential pitfall is if the Web3 community doesn't address the ethical and social implications of this technology.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, we need to think about things like privacy, data ownership, accessibility,
Okay.
and even the potential for new forms of inequality and exclusion.
Yeah, we don't want to create a digital world that's even more divided than the real world.
Right, we need to be mindful of the potential downsides and work to mitigate them.
So it's about using this technology responsibly.
Exactly, it's not just about blindly embracing it because it's new and shiny.
It's about making conscious choices.
Exactly, we need to have open and honest conversations about the kind of future we want to create.
Okay, so it sounds like Web3 offers a unique opportunity to reimagine the internet.
It does.
But it's up to all of us to ensure that it benefits humanity as a whole.
I completely agree. It's a shared responsibility.
We've talked about the potential, the challenges.
The cultural shifts.
Yeah. Now let's get into how Web3 is changing the relationship between humans and technology.
This is where it gets really interesting.
It feels like Web3 is blurring the lines between the real and the digital.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in the metaverse, people are buying virtual land, attending concerts, even getting married.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's crazy. And these immersive experiences are just the beginning, right?
Just the tip of the iceberg. As Web3 technologies evolve, we can expect even more seamless experiences between the physical and digital worlds.
What does that mean for our sense of identity?
Well, when Web 2, our online identities are kind of fragmented.
Yeah, we have profiles on all these different platforms.
Exactly. And those platforms, they control the data.
They control the rules.
Yeah. But Web 3 is all about decentralization and user ownership.
So we could have one unified digital identity.
Potentially.
Yeah, that we control.
Exactly. Imagine a digital wallet that not only stores your cryptocurrency, but also verifies your credentials, manages your data, represents your online presence.
So it's like a passport for the digital world.
Is a way, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But what about the potential downsides? Could this lead to new forms of exclusion or discrimination?
That's a valid concern.
Like if some people can't access the technology or don't have the skills to manage their digital identities?
Right. We need to make sure that Web3 is accessible to everyone.
That doesn't create even more inequality.
Exactly.
So it's really important to prioritize accessibility and inclusivity.
Absolutely, from the very beginning.
And that ties into digital literacy.
Oh, huge.
Like people need to understand how this technology works,
What the implications are.
how to use it responsibly.
Exactly. It's not just about learning how to use the latest app.
It's about understanding the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's about critical thinking, problem solving, ethical decision making.
So it's really about empowering individuals to be active participants in the digital world.
Not just passive consumers.
I like that. So it seems like Web3 is prompting us to rethink our relationship with technology in a really fundamental way.
I think so, yeah.
It's not just a tool anymore, it's becoming more integrated into who we are.
It's almost like an extension of ourselves.
Wow, that's a pretty deep thought.
As technology becomes more integrated into our lives, the lines between the human and the technological become increasingly blurred.
And that raises some big questions.
About what it means to be human in a digital age.
Okay, I'm going to need a minute to process all of that.
Take your time.
It's fascinating, but also a little bit scary.
It's definitely a lot to think about.
But I guess that's what makes exploring Web3 so interesting.
It challenges us to think differently.
About the world and our place in it.
Absolutely.
So for someone who's just starting to learn about all this,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
Be curious. Be open to learning new things.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Experiment. Make mistakes.
Embrace the journey.
Exactly. And remember, the future of Web3 is not set in stone.
It's still being written.
And we all have a role to play in shaping it.
So let's go out there and explore, experiment, and create the kind of digital future we want to see.
I'm with you on that.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Web3.
It's been quite a journey.
Big thanks again to Creditizens for having us on their channel to talk about all this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to their channel.
We need more likes.
And to all of you watching, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.